All right, so welcome everyone. So the workshop today is going to be on Scalar, using Scalar for sharing your research or using it as a publishing platform for digital scholarship projects. So the link on the screen here goes to these slides, and I have some links embedded throughout that might be useful. So we'll go ahead and before we dive in, I do want to pause and acknowledge that we're living through multiple crises. So of course, the pandemic and other structural inequalities have disproportionately affected people of color, particularly Black and Indigenous peoples. So as a member of the UC Riverside community, I stand with Black Lives Matter against racial injustice, police brutality, and other human rights violations. I also want to acknowledge our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of this land, water, and air being located in Riverside, California, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseño, and Serrano peoples, as well as their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. And while we're currently meeting in a virtual digital space, I do invite you wherever you're located in the world to learn whose ancestral lands you're physically located on at the link on the screen, native-land.ca. So essentially for today, absolutely do whatever works best for you. If you want to engage in chat, please feel free to engage whatever way you're comfortable. So essentially for today, kind of one primary goal being to, look at this particular digital scholarship publishing platform called Scalar and look at ways that other folks are using it and kind of talk about how you might use it to create long form, media-rich scholarly websites. But I also will just start off with a very kind of brief overview about kind of how Scalar fits into the larger ecosystem of web publishing I won't go too into detail on that because I have a workshop planned actually for May of this year. So for folks who are here today, can feel free to sign up for that. And if someone's watching this recording in the future, that should be available on the UCR Library's YouTube channel once it is, has been held and is available. And again, the link on the screen goes to the slides for today. I'm getting a notification that my audio quality might not be good right now. So I'm hoping that that is not the case. I can try using headphones if the audio is not, if anyone could let me know whether the audio is not working well for you. Okay, I'll keep an eye on that. Thank you, Julie. Okay, hopefully it didn't obscure too much. But I was just, I think I was just saying that the link on the slides or the link on the screen goes to the slides for today. And I should also introduce myself. So I'm Rachel Starry. I'm the Digital Scholarship Librarian here at UC Riverside Library. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. So before talking about, as we're talking about using a platform like Scalar for publishing digital scholarship, I kind of wanted to, just take a moment and address, a definition of digital scholarship, maybe for folks who are new to this kind of arena. So the way that I'm using this phrase is essentially to describe a range of scholarly activities, including research, teaching, and publishing that use, digital tools or methods. And I really like this other definition that kind of frames digital scholarship not just as the outcome, but also the process of creating new, often fluid forms of scholarship using those digital tools and methods. So it is both kind of that, iterative and collaborative process, as well as the actual outcome or, website or whatever the actual tool or database or archive is that, you're creating through those activities. So in terms of web publishing, what are some of the open source options that are out there for authoring and sharing scholarly content online? So I'm making a distinction here between websites that are created through static web generators versus content management systems. So the one that we're looking at today, Scalar, is on the content management side of things because it kind of has a database backend where it is dealing with the content, the media, or other kinds of objects that you're bringing into your site. But essentially, if you're thinking about sharing content online, right? Websites essentially consist of two things. They consist of the content as well as the styling, the way that that content is formatted and arranged and displayed. So content management systems, right? They are platforms or tools that take your content, whatever that is, and apply predetermined templates or themes to it. And typically with content management systems, or you'll see it abbreviated CMS, those don't create the HTML pages in advance. They create them kind of dynamically as users are visiting your site. And the majority of content online is actually dynamically rendered in that way. Static website generators, on the other hand, they don't dynamically generate the HTML like when someone visits your site. They do that in advance, by pre-building the HTML pages and having them ready on the server. So that's a kind of different approach. Static web generators are typically used for kind of smaller sites that maybe don't need the content to change as often. And traditionally, CMSs are used to kind of manage and display a lot of content when you need that database backend. So that's kind of where Scalar fits in. That said, Scalar is a little bit different than other CMSs you might be familiar with, like WordPress or Drupal or Omeka, which is really commonly used for digital scholarship projects, and which we use here at UCR. Scalar really intends for that content not to kind of live locally, but it pulls in the media and the metadata about that media and links to it where it lives in different online archives. And it makes it really easy to import media in different ways. So we'll kind of talk about the strengths of Scalar as we go along, but that's, it's useful to kind of be aware of how it fits into this larger ecosystem. So in terms of getting access to Scalar and using this site, as well as other open source content management systems, you generally have two kind of options. So you can either self-host it or look at your kind of local institutional infrastructure if it is available. So a lot of institutions offer WordPress hosting for faculty and students, things like that. I don't believe here at UCR we have, there's no one that's hosting Scalar sites in particular yet. I would love for the library to get into that game eventually. We're just not there yet. But that said, if you want to have kind of more control over your Scalar site, Reclaim Hosting is a fantastic option. So this is actually what we're going to be looking at today is, and like playing around with a sandbox Scalar site that is installed on my own personal Reclaim, shared hosting domain. So this is a really fantastic company that provides shared hosting at a really affordable rate for institutions and educators. So they have, they have rates for individuals, for, maybe larger projects if you're working on, something that's grant funded and a little bit larger in scope or scale. They have options for all of that. And what's really kind of key about this is they allow you to have multiple subdomains. So, I'm able to have Scalar installed as well as, Omeka and WordPress. I can use all of those on just one Reclaim account. That is one option for Scalar, but you can also look into different third-party hosting options. So this is kind of, this is true for many different content management systems. You can find hosted versions of WordPress and Omeka. Scalar offers one through USC. So if you go to, you can actually sign up for Scalar and request a key. So educators actually on the contact page of the ANVC site, the Alliance for Networking Visual Culture, who is the creators of Scalar, you can request a key. So if you're affiliated with an academic or cultural heritage institution, you can use this form, which again is at scalar.me on their contact page, and request a key. And they generally get back to folks pretty quickly about getting a site set up that will then be hosted at scalar.usc.edu. So those are kind of your two options, but what is Scalar? So I've been kind of talking about it generally as a content management system that does something a little bit different with media maybe, but essentially Scalar is a free open source authoring and publishing platform that's designed to make it easy for authors to write long form born digital scholarship online. And the long form born digital is kind of, again, what makes Scalar a little bit unique and different from other platforms that might be focused more on, that were designed for blogging, really, that are designed for kind of short form. And we'll look at kind of what that looks like. So what is unique about Scalar? Again, how does it kind of compare to some of those other options that are out there within this kind of web digital publishing ecosystem? So the main thing that I've kind of alluded to already is that Scalar has support for importing media directly from a few affiliated archives, and it also makes it easy to bring in and link to content in a variety of other online archives. It also lets you and has built-in support for directly annotating the media that you bring in. So whether that's images, audio, video, or even just plain text, you can annotate it in different ways. And those annotations can be treated as pages. So that brings me to the last point here, flexible structure. I'll probably say this many times today and explain it many times, but inside of Scalar, everything is a page. So unlike in other content management systems where there's, for example, WordPress, a kind of dichotomy between pages and posts. You have, pages, they're just static pages where you can put content on them and organize them in whatever way, as well as pages that display kind of posts, blog posts. Everything in Scalar is a page. Everything gets assigned a unique URL, so it can be referenced, linked to, and viewed as its own page. That includes all media objects, all annotations, all comments. And we'll look at all those kind of, different aspects in a minute. Another aspect of this, in addition to everything's a page and can be viewed as a page, is the pathing structure. So Scalar allows you to organize your pages, again, including media objects, including tags and annotations, into paths. So you can really customize how people engage with your content and how you lead them through and allow them to kind of explore your content in different ways, both linearly and non-linearly. So let's go ahead and look at a couple of examples to kind of see how this actually looks. So I love this example of a collection of photographs taken at the International Space Station. So this, all Scalar sites are going to have this kind of header, this gray header bar, and you can engage with the kind of table of contents for all sites. And by default, they all have home pages and indexes. And then these are all the different paths. So these are the things that the site creator has set up, different ways for you to engage with the content in this site. So you can, from this kind of home landing page, enter into any path that they have chosen. Usually it's some kind of introduction. And we're already starting to see different ways that media can be displayed. So we have a background image here. We have this kind of header splash image. And then media can be displayed both in line like this. And the reason it's kind of dynamically moving around, as I'm hovering over this media object, it is displaying the metadata. So again, really unique kind of affordance of Scalar is the ability to really customize the metadata for all of the media objects that you're bringing in. You can add as much information about each object as you want. And if you're pulling it in from an affiliated archive, it will automatically pull in all that information, so you don't have to manually enter it in. So that's a really powerful feature. But we can kind of follow through the different paths that the creators of this site have set up. This is an essay on how this photography fit into the ISS archaeological project, again, with a lot of inline media. We can skip around. I actually want to show here as well. So this button is also on all Scalar sites. And here you can kind of see some of the different ways that Scalar has built in to visualize the content of the site. Again, since everything is a page and everything is kind of treated in a similar way, you can kind of view all the connections between the content. Yeah, the link to this, that's a great question. So the links, all the links on this slide deck are available, and I will share the link in chat. But yes, and thank you. Julie, for sharing the link to this particular book in chat. But I will make sure that you all have access to all the links in the slide deck as well. So we can here view all these different visualizations of the content in the site. And I'm just going to look first at the media. So this is essentially a network kind of diagram of all the different media objects in this site. And we can see how they're connected. So there are media objects that are on this path related to the essay that I mentioned. There are media objects on that introduction path, as well as interior space. This is an exhibit, a page for the an exhibition of these photographs. So all of the photos of the exhibition are on this path or on this page. Some other examples of ways folks have used that, have used Scalar. So the ISS project was created by folks and is hosted at Chapman in Southern California. This is a project at Lehigh University that is essentially bringing together writings of a variety of different African-American women writers from the early 20th century. So we can do the same thing. We can kind of enter into the site as the designer has set up the path for us. There are different kinds of widgets that you can embed. This is another instance of that visualization here being embedded right into the page. Again, if you ever lose that header bar, you can just scroll back up and it will reappear. But if we go to the table of contents, we can see that there are paths for the writings of different women. So we can kind of skip around, we can read, kind of enter into any of these paths and see how, again, media can be brought in different ways. And then one final kind of example, Scalar site is this one that is actually hosted at scalar.usc. So this is a digital exhibit, and here you can see that this landing page background is actually a GIF, a moving image, so you can have video as the kind of splash. So you can even have videos being the background images for pages. But this is a digital exhibit of architectural photography by Wayne Tom. This is a great example of how media can be linked. So both displayed kind of in line, and then you can link text to particular media.
I was a professional ski instructor for 3 years.
So for video and audio, you can have it autoplay when someone clicks on the link, but it's also, you can kind of control how those thumbnails and things are displayed in line as well. Again, being able to navigate different aspects of the project through the different paths. This project actually makes use of Scalar's, some of Scalar's built-in features. So there is a type of page that you can embed where Scalar will take all of the media objects that are associated with this page or path and plot them on a Google map. Of course, you have to have spatial metadata associated with it. So if your images have, for example, a particular location field in the metadata that's filled out, you can automatically generate this kind of map. You can also automatically generate timelines if your media has time metadata associated with it. So a year or a date, you can use this feature to bring in this timeline, which is powered by Timeline.js, a Nightlab tool. So a couple of different unique things that are kind of built in here, in addition to all these different ways of visualizing site content. So this is all kind of unique to Scalar as compared to other content management systems. So are there any questions so far before we move over into actually poking around Scalar? Just pause for a minute. Well, before we go ahead and dive in and actually look at what the administrative interface looks like and talk about pathing and things in more detail, to kind of summarize again, when Scalar might be the most useful tool for you compared to other platforms, and that's a great question, Jorge. What is the difference between a common web page or website and Scalar? So this is we'll kind of see some of those differences when we look at it in a minute, but also Scalar is really explicitly useful for when you want to have customized pathing. So a lot of other content management systems have a very kind of static page and post way of organizing the content, whereas in Scalar, you can create paths that can be linear, can be non-linear. You can create choose your own adventure stories, essentially, using Scalar if you wanted to. You can choose how people encounter content through the use of paths. If you're using a lot of multimedia, Scalar is a great option, especially if that media lives somewhere else, lives in a different online archive, because you can bring it in without actually, using local storage. So the media will stay living where it is, and it's just linked by Scalar. And it will bring in all of the metadata from content that you're bringing in from affiliated archives. And you can also highly customize the metadata, which is a little bit different from other kinds of content management systems. It also has those built-in annotation and visualization tools that are really quite different from other CMSs like WordPress or Drupal, for example. So let's then go ahead and look at an example Scalar book and what it looks like. So I was not logged in the other browser window, but I am logged in over here. So I'm again using my personal Reclaim Hosting hosted domain, which has Scalar installed on it. So this might look a little bit different if you're using the USC hosted Scalar option. But this is essentially what it looks like once you're logged in. You will see the this is the login button, and it just changes to your account and sign out. But we have the same sorts of navigation options up here. So currently this site does not have anything in its table of contents apart from this homepage. So we'll kind of build this out together. I have pre-populated it with some media objects though. So if we go to visualizations and just look at all the media on this site, we have, and you can kind of change this to a variety of different things. So it has been pre-populated with some media content from different sources, primarily Wikimedia Commons and the Internet Archive. And again, you can bring content in a variety of ways. So let's look at that first. So this button right here is the Import Media button. So this is where you're going to go if you want to, again, bring in media from some of the affiliated archives or other places online. Unfortunately, so if we go to Critical Commons and the Internet Archive are the two kind of primary sources that Scalar enables you to automatically bring in media and metadata. Unfortunately, there is an issue with the XML and my installation of Scalar, likely because of a recent update. So I can't demo what this actually looks like, unfortunately, today. But this is, how you would do it. You would go in here and search, and then results would appear, and you would select which media to bring in, and it would automatically pull in the metadata as well. So this is a really fantastic feature. You can also bring in content from Omeka sites. So a lot of times folks use Omeka as a place to build digital collections and archives. So if your institution uses Omeka or Omeka S, you'll be able to easily kind of import media from Omeka. And SoundCloud and YouTube are linked in here, but you can bring in, you can either upload or again, link to media files. So upload, if you're using the free USC hosted version, I believe it's limited to 2 megabytes per media object. And then total storage is going to be limited by wherever your Scalar is installed. So for me, I believe it's 150 megabytes per media object using my Reclaim instance. And then it's whatever your kind of local storage limit is. So that's 2 gigabytes, I believe, for me. But you can also link to media files. So we'll go ahead and look at what that looks like. So anytime you want to bring in something from really anywhere online, you just need to get the URL that goes to that actual file. So if we search for something on the Internet Archive, I'll do a search for Riverside, California, and you can bring in any content that you want. Of course, you'll want to be aware of any restrictions in terms of copyright ownership. So generally it's, keep that in mind if you're pulling stuff in from different archives. You might want to look at the rights statements in terms of the ability to reuse the content. You can search for, primarily open public domain content. Let's see. So if we choose any of these, I want to make sure I choose one that is, okay, C-SPAN, great. Oh, but there is a copyright notice on it. Well, I will choose something else. Let's see. City of Riverside. So if we wanted to grab, for example, this video, I will grab the actual link to the item itself versus the page. So if I put in just this URL to this entire page, then Scalar would import the entire page, which you can do. So we'll look at what that looks like to actually import an entire web page. But for instance, you would want to, since you're not pulling something in automatically, you would want to go in and fill out all of these different metadata fields for whatever object you're bringing in. But essentially it is, and we'll talk about this in a minute, as easy as giving it a title, description, and link to the file. And then that's all, that is all Scalar needs to import that media item from the source. And again, if you're pulling something in from Internet Archive, you would typically just use the affiliated archives importer, but that is currently broken for me. So now we have this page. It's a media object, but it's also a page that displays this video. And all of the metadata associated with it. And of course, I didn't fill it in, so there's nothing there. But if we want, we can see it on the list of media. In here. All right, so let me pop over to the dashboard because this is something that gets a little bit confusing. So for any Scalar project, you're going to have access to particular settings for your Scalar book, and in fact, that is what they are called. Scalar calls its sites books because it's kind of intended for long-form scholarship. So I have multiple Scalar books, and you can select on your dashboard which book you want to manage. So this is the book that I'm in currently. You can change, certain aspects of your project here. You can control who has access to your book. So this is really really useful. You can assign folks to be authors. You can also assign folks to be editors. Something is going on. So there's different kinds of user permissions that you can assign to folks. You can assign folks to be reviewers. So folks are even using Scalar to kind of do peer review and manuscript review when folks are creating, kind of using Scalar for, book projects, essentially. You can also kind of control the privacy and readability of your Scalar sites. So you can choose whether or not it appears in different Scalar indexes. You can choose who can view it. And here is where you can also view all of the media objects that are in your site, as well as you can import them right in here. This is the same as doing that within the actual interface we were looking at before. You can also view all the pages on your site, and this dashboard is where you would set up the table of contents once you have pages for it. So let's go back into the actual site just by clicking on any of those URLs. So we're back on this site. All right. I might actually go back to the dashboard to talk about the 6 types of content. So there are 6 essential types of content in a Scalar book or a Scalar site. So you have pages. Pages, again, are the kind of building block of Scalar sites. So like other content management systems, you can create multiple pages and link them together in different ways. But everything also acts as a page. So you can link to anything and you can kind of path things together, whether they are pages or media objects or tags or other things. So pages and media really form kind of the backbone of any Scalar project, but there are other ways that you can kind of link things together. And so that is primarily paths. So a path essentially just is a way that you tell your users to navigate through your site. So if you link content together in a path, then that is how folks will encounter it. You can also enable comments. So someone can comment on any page, again, any media object that is in the site. And you can also use tags as a way to kind of categorize the content. And then annotations, again, you can annotate any media object. Image annotations are, in terms of selecting a portion of that image. And with audio and video, you can select timestamps. So annotations. And you can view all of those different ways of marking up and kind of building those relationships here in the dashboard. So let's go back into the site and just start building out some pages. So if you go to, I click this plus sign here, that is going to take you to this create a new page. So this is kind of the fundamental, again, building block of a site. So you can give your page a title. So I want to do, I would like to have a landing page that's going to list all the paths for my site. And of course, I don't have any paths yet. So I'm going to, let's just create a basic page. So page 1, a basic content page. And you can give it a description. You can add in all your content here. So this is a kind of what you see is what you get editor. You can copy and paste in text. So if I go ahead and grab some just lorem ipsum text, we can paste it in here. I want to call attention to these buttons here. So it's useful sometimes when you're copying from lots of different places online. You can paste as plain text with this button, and you can also, oops, guess I didn't actually copy. Let's generate and then copy it and then paste in. And if you ever want to strip out formatting that you don't want, you can highlight that text and use this button here for remove format. So that's really useful. So if you want to link media objects in, and again, there's multiple ways to bring in media objects. You can highlight text and then use what's called the link. So we can either insert the link or insert the item itself. So I'm going to insert a media link here on the text that I had highlighted and select an item. And you have kind of options for how you want it to appear. I'm going to have it appear medium, align right. And then you can choose what kind of information appears below the media as well. Let me do that for a couple of media objects just to demonstrate what it looks like. Again, adding a link in, and we will pick, this is a video. Again, medium. All right. And we're going to leave the page layout as a basic layout. So got a question in chat. When you insert media, does it need to be media that you've already attached? Yes. So it's only going to see, if you click on this link, it's only going to let you search for media that's in your site already. So that's essentially why I went and pre-populated the site with some media using this import button. So this is kind of like a first step, get some media in, and then start to create ways that people engage with that media and the content. Great question. Layouts, you can kind of control how your page appears using layouts. So what's really nice is they give you this kind of preview and description of what each layout type is, so you don't have to remember all the different types, but there's really a wide variety in here. So a lot of your content will probably use a basic layout that mixes text and media, but you can also, for your kind of landing page, which is the only page that currently exists in this example book, use a book splash, which has just a single kind of media object with text overlaid on top of it. You can also add to a kind of basic layout a large image at the top. So a lot of folks use this layout for kind of the first page in a chapter or a path. Splash shows it's kind of like a section header, again, with that full background, of which the book splash is the kind of one that's intended to be used for the entire project. Visual path is a great option for a kind of menu of paths. So, and of course you can create paths of paths. So if you think of, maybe a path as a chapter, if you want to have a chapter or a series of, media items that you're walking someone through, you can, have a path that links out to multiple different chapters and use that as a way to kind of organize the site. It's very flexible and it sounds kind of abstract as I'm describing it, but that's kind of the strength of Scalar, is its flexibility. It's really, you decide how your site looks and how someone engages with it. There's also these different interactive types of page layouts. So this one is, and for each of these you can add additional kind of text content, narrative framing this stuff, but a media gallery, so rather than having a header image at the top of the page, you can embed all of the media related to that page, either through tags or if the page is a path, and they'll all appear up here in the top. So let's just create one page here using this basic layout to show you all what this looks like, and then we'll start to build out from there. So it's as simple as that, bringing in your text, and if you have linked to images or video or audio, any media objects, the links, this is how they will appear. And then you can kind of, again, customize where you want, how large you want these previews to be. If you click on any of these objects, it will pull up the details for that media object. But of course, you can always go to the actual page for that object because it has its own assigned URL. Every image, every audio, video object you bring in is also a page. So that's essentially the kind of basic layout. So we've made a basic page. Let me make a new page and let's use a different layout. Let's do page to a media gallery. And we'll just, do I still have it pasted? Yeah. Pop some lorem ipsum in here, maybe, describing the media that we're going to be including on this page. So I'm going to go down and pick, let's do media gallery. So in order to tell this page, which media to display in the media gallery, you can also click in here. There's really helpful kind of help links throughout. So you have to have associated the media with the page. So if you insert the images on the page, you can do that. You can also use a tag or make the page a path. So I'm going to actually make the page a path. And you do that by going to relationships and clicking path. And then it, will prompt you to make this page a path, choose the items that it contains. And again, you can choose other pages or you can choose media objects, and you change whether you're looking at pages versus media objects, or again, since everything else is a page, you can include anything, annotations, tags. So you can create a path of all the ways people have commented on, the content in your site, or all the ways, all the different annotations. It's really flexible. So let's look at media files and create a gallery of all of the images. So I want this one and this one and this one. So we'll select these 3 items and hit add selected. You can drag and drop them to reorder them. So I will do that. And let's see, do we need to change anything else? I don't believe so. Let's save and view. So I selected media gallery as the page type, and then I assigned 3 media objects to the page. So now we have this media kind of carousel at the top of the page. And you can do all the same things that we looked at on the kind of basic page. And actually, so nothing is showing up here yet. So if I wanted to go in and build out that table of contents, I can do it a couple of ways. So what I could do is go and create. So I kind of want, I want a landing page, as I was saying earlier. So I want a landing page that kind of pulls in all the other pages that, then might be the starts of their own paths. So for that, I'm going to select the visual path layout. And then I'm going to make this page a path and choose the items it contains. But rather than choosing media objects, I'm going to pick all of the pages that I've started to create. So I didn't add any content to this page. I just gave it a title and made it a and made it a path. So let's customize, let's edit this page. So you use this pencil icon to make changes. So I want that to appear kind of a little more dynamically. So let's see. I think I need to choose a key image. Key image? It's a key image. For the splash. No, I want to, maybe I need to change the, I believe I need to. Okay, so I think what needs to happen, if I go back, if I want to change the way that this looks really basic. If I want an image to appear here, right, instead of just a gray background, I will need to go and edit these pages themselves, I believe. So let's go in here to page 1 and edit this. And a key image, I'll need to associate a key image, I believe, with this page. So I'm going to select an image of Fairmount Park. So Fairmount Park will not be shown here, but if I go to landing page, this key image is now going to be shown here for page 1. And you can kind of customize further. So if we go in here and choose a key image, do the same thing for page 2. Let's select, Riverside High School. We'll select as the key image for this page. So go down to styling, key image. All right, so now we will have, and I'm just using the index to quickly find my landing page because it's not in the table of contents yet. So now this is a little more of a visually appealing, kind of path of paths, right? So I could enter into any of the different, I could move on to any of the different pages. And if I made each of these, their own path, anyways, it's kind of just to show you that this is kind of at the start of building out, your Scalar site. But in order to make this kind of functional, I need to add, kind of build out the table of contents. So I want to add my landing page to the table of contents. And to do that, I'm going to have to go back into the dashboard, because that is where you set up your table of contents. So right here under, I believe it's book properties, or not. Yep, it is. Okay, table of contents. So you can add anything you want really to the table of contents, but I'm going to look in paths, since I know this landing page is my primary path. So I'm going to add that. And I'm also, so I'll add that. I'm also going to go ahead and add the 2 pages as well. So now I have 3 items in my table of contents. And of course, item number 1 is actually the thing that leads to items number 2 and 3. So it's really what you choose to do with it. So I'm going to scroll down and then hit save. And then we can go back and look at the book. So pop back over to the book. And now over here in our table of contents, we have essentially, chapters 1, 2, and 3, or in this case, our landing page, which goes to the other pages. So that's just, essentially kind of the basics of creating different pages. Again, there are many different layouts. So you can select the layouts if you wanted to, for example, use those additional kind of features like adding a map or adding a timeline. You can actually select the layout for those particular pages. There's also one called Structured Media Gallery if you have kind of a digital exhibit or a collection of images and you want to show all of those. But you can also, for example, on just a basic content layout page, you can add in these widgets. So if you insert a, insert it in line, you can also just add a map or a visualization or a carousel or a timeline or any of these other kind of widgets right in, any other page. So it's really, really flexible, I suppose, is kind of the main takeaway here. Are there any questions in particular about this kind of administrative dashboard, about creating pages, any of the kind of basic importing media sorts of things? Well, let's, I have a couple of slides that talk a bit more about the pathing, because I understand that that can be pretty confusing. So let's just talk through briefly some of the options to kind of maybe demystify as I'm talking about, making paths and laying out your site as paths. So again, pages and all other media content in Scalar can be combined into paths that make it easier for folks to kind of navigate your site. So you can kind of use really strictly linear paths if you want, right? So like the chapters in a book where in this case, one chapter leads to the next. That's kind of how a lot of, web pages or other websites and content management systems organize content in a very linear way. You can also do parallel or kind of siloed paths. So if you wanted to create a Scalar site that acted kind of like, the articles in a journal, where, the end of each one kind of leads back to the homepage. Or you could do, chapters in a book where, each chapter leads to the start of the next chapter. You could also, and this is kind of a more complex diagram, but, again, illustrating, you can really send, at the end of any path, you can choose where someone goes next. So that can kind of become more complex and allow you to be really flexible in helping folks navigate your site, depending on the kind of content that you have. You can also reuse pages in different paths. So, here you can have media objects that get reused in lots of different paths. So, for example, in that in the digital exhibit of Wayne Tom's architectural photographs, you could explore those by type. You could also explore them by firm. So you can kind of give people different options for ways to encounter your content and also reuse it across multiple paths. And then that path of paths that I was talking about, you can kind of use the path feature as a way to organize and link together content in a lot of different ways. So that's kind of that landing page that I created was a path. It was only a path of pages, but if each of those pages I had linked to was also a path, it would kind of fall into this category. And you can also, in this example down here at the bottom, you can create paths of just media, because again, everything in Scalar is a page. So each media object can be treated like a page in a path. And again, super flexible options in terms of branching paths. So you could do kind of a logic where someone, again, chooses their direction at any point, or even something as complex as a choose your own adventure story. So it's really, really, really flexible in terms of how you're pathing out things. So I have a couple of links here at the end of this slide deck. Again, and I had promised that I would grab the link to that. So I will share the link to these slides in chat. I'd encourage you all to check out the Scalar Showcase. There's a lot of other example Scalar projects in here in the Scalar Showcase, particularly highlighting kind of how Scalar has been used for different types of digital projects, everything from, online books, online companions to books, as well as really complex kind of, different sorts of digital archives and, projects of all different kinds. And then the Scalar User Guide is another really useful kind of starting point to learn more. So I kind of generally covered the flexibility and functionality of Scalar today, but there's a lot more to kind of talk about. So this is actually a Scalar site, a Scalar book, that helps you kind of walk through all those different processes of getting started and importing and working with media and building out content, in more detail, and talking about those other kind of widgets, the map and the timeline and different visualizations, as well as kind of learning more about pathing and building out the structure of your site. So are there any kind of final questions or thoughts about how you all are hoping to use this platform or think that you might use this platform? Well, if there's no final questions, then I will exit out of here and make sure I share the link in chat to these slides. For folks who are local to Riverside, you can always get in touch either with me directly or by going to the library website and clicking on Ask a Librarian and submitting your questions that way. I'm going to share in chat a link to a very, very short survey. If you have just a couple of minutes, it helps us decide on additional topics for workshops that you might want to see, or to understand how we can improve our workshops as we're offering them on these different topics. And I will also copy this link into chat to the slides. So thank you all for participating today. Go ahead and stop the recording.